Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of B. Byler Theology. Today we are wrapping up the series P.S.A. and the Blood. In part 1 and 2, we looked at how the Old Testament was not as legalistic as some think, for God desires relationship and obedience over sacrifice. We saw how while the old sacrificial system was important under the Old Testament law, it was more about relationship and foreshadowing the coming of Christ than anything else. We also saw how certain sins could have not been atoned for under the Old Testament law, but because of the people's faith and looking forward to the coming of the Messiah, the people could find forgiveness even though Jesus had not died and shed his blood yet. Then in part 3, we asked questions like, why did Jesus call us to pick up our cross if Jesus died in our place? Did Jesus truly die a substitutionary death? Was there some debt that needed paying, and if so, why? Why did Jesus need to die? Through looking at these questions, we saw that our God is a just God, and there does seem to be a debt that needed paying. We saw how Jesus dying on the cross paid that debt, and it also displayed the ultimate love. Then we also saw that Jesus died in our place, but at the same time, he also died ahead of us for the purpose of displaying how we should live our lives and love one another. As we continue into part 4, was it necessary for Jesus to die a brutal death? We're going to look into 2 more ideas surrounding P.S.A. and surrounding the question of, was it necessary for Jesus to die the death that he died? We will ask questions like, was it God or mankind who killed Jesus on the cross? And did Jesus need to die to satisfy God's wrath? So let's dive into part 4. Was it necessary for Jesus to die a brutal death? Okay, testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we are up and running. So was it necessary for Jesus to die a brutal death? And to answer this question, I would like to start off with looking at some scripture. And the scripture say, but God knew what would happen, and his prearranged plan was carried out when Jesus was betrayed. With the help of lawless Gentiles, you nailed him to a cross and killed him. Acts chapter 2, verse 23. Then as we also see, you rejected this holy, righteous one and instead demanded the release of a murderer. You killed the author of life, but God raised him from the dead, and we are witnesses of this fact. Acts chapter 3, verse 14 through 15. Then John chapter 19, verse 11, it says, and Jesus said, you would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above. So the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin. And note, this was saying it wasn't saying that God handed Jesus over, but rather it was referring to Judas who betrayed Jesus. And there's also scripture where Jesus, he's saying, I will strike the shepherd and the flock will scatter. And when we take all the scripture into its context, I think we can see it's like this is something that God allowed to happen. And I think when we read the scripture where it says, I will strike the shepherd and the flock will scatter, I think we can also suggest that it was also God who killed Jesus on the cross. And did this satisfy God's wrath? And it's like when we go to Isaiah 53, it's like he was bruised for our transgressions, and by his wounds we are healed. So I think in a way maybe he did satisfy God's wrath. And back to the question, it's like, did Jesus really need to die the gruesome death that he died? And if so, why? And it appears that there is some element of satisfying God's wrath, but I also think that there's a great element of where Christ was displaying the ultimate love. He's saying that I will come down in the flesh as a human being, as God in the flesh, and die for you. An innocent person, I will die for you to show you how much I love you. So I think it's kind of a mix of things, and it almost sounds wrong to be like, well, Jesus died to satisfy God's wrath. It's like, how is this just? Because it's like we would think that an all powerful deity would not have this need of being wrathful. And I understand what you're thinking on that. And I know that this piece of P.S.A. and studying this, it's kind of a mystery to me. It's kind of a mystery. So through this series, it's like we've gone over a lot of stuff. I mean, the Bible, um, we've gone through the sacrifices and what that all meant, and how the Old Testament is not as legalistic as some think. We've gone through, asking the question, it's like, did Jesus die ahead of us or in our place? And we've maybe came to a conclusion of both. It's like Jesus, he demonstrated of how we should live our life, and he displayed the ultimate love of how we should love each other while also dying in our place. And then we also went over, I'm trying to remember what part 2 was about. Yeah, that was also about elaborating on the sacrifices, seeing that even though for like people like David, who committed sins of which there was no atoning sacrifice for in the Old Testament, what we saw of how, because he was looking ahead, he could find salvation. It's like through the series, we see that the Bible is not as legalistic as we think it is. God, he has a purpose in everything that he does. And while we might not understand why for some of the answers, I believe that we can see through the scriptures that God, he is the most trustworthy being. He is full in knowledge, and we as human beings, we have finite knowledge. So I think the best we can do is just trust him with the things that we do not understand. So that's all I have for you today as we wrap up this series. Be on the lookout for more series. We got 2 partial things coming up that are not a part of a series. We're going to be talking about why does God allow evil in the world, and we're also going to be talking about, is alcohol okay? Be on the lookout for them videos in the coming weeks, and until next time.